Dr. Piero Lurcher directs the Vienna Medical Chamber's Department of Environmental Health in Austria. He co-authored the 2016 paper EuroPAIM, EMF Guidelines for the Prevention, Diagnosis, and Treatment of EMF-related Health Problems and Illnesses.
First of all, I say a warm welcome from Austria, Europe. And before I start my presentation, I would like to express my thanks to Libby Kelly, her team, for the perfect organization and the special commitment to public and environmental health. My lecture is about prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of EMF-associated illness with focus on mobile phones and 5G. And we will talk also about new aspects on international policies and actions for public health. Now, what is the starting position? Physicians are increasingly confronted with health problems from unidentified causes. Studies, empirical observations, and many patient reports clearly indicate interactions between EMF exposure and health problems. Now, we are currently facing several challenges. Individual susceptibility and environmental factors are frequently neglected. Furthermore, new wireless technologies and applications have been introduced without any certainty about their health effects, raising new challenges for medicine and society. What are the common electromagnetic field, so-called EMF sources? First, radio frequency radiation from radio and TV broadcast antennas, Wi-Fi, access points, routers, smartphones, tablets, cordless and mobile phones, including their base stations and Bluetooth devices. They have frequency about 3 megahertz to 300 gigahertz. Then the existing extremely low frequency electric and magnetic fields from electrical wiring, lamps and appliances, for example. They have a frequency from about 3 hertz to 3 kilohertz. And then you have very low frequency electric and magnetic fields, which are emitted due to harmonic voltage and current distortions from electrical wiring, also from lamps and many electronic devices. And they have a frequency in the range of 3 kilohertz to 3 megahertz. It is important to know that many modern devices emit EMF of different frequency ranges simultaneously. For example, mobile phones create EMF in RF, VLF, and ELF frequency ranges, and also a static magnetic field. Therefore, it is important to consider combined exposures for the assessment of health effects. I repeat, we have to consider combined exposures. This is the challenge. What are the health effects of EMF? You distinguish direct and indirect health effects. The direct health effects are caused by radiation, for example, cancer, but also electro-hypersensitivity. It is a fact that the International Agency for Research on Cancer classified radiofrequency electromagnetic fields as possibly carcinogenic for humans. It's group 2B. This classification is still current and applies to all radiofrequency, including the frequencies up to 300 gigahertz intended for 5G. The direct effects are discussed, and it's a fact that long-term research is needed. What are such direct effects? As I quoted before, it's cancer, genotoxic effects, neurological effects, neurodegenerative diseases, infertility, reproduction disorders, but also electromagnetic hypersensitivity, EHS. There are many risks and harmful effects you don't know to think about in the first moment. These are the so-called indirect health effects. They are caused by incorrect and excessive usage behavior of cell phones and smartphones. Example for these indirect health effects are addiction. It's a great problem, addiction. Behavioral disorders, musculoskeletal disorders, the so-called handy neck, from putting the mobile phone in the neck, but also impaired mother-child interaction, increased risk of accidents due to distraction in work and also traffic accidents. Furthermore, we have environmental effects. For example, waste problems, the so-called technological scrap iron. Then the environmental damage, the exploitation of the local population, for example, mining the rare earth elements like yttrium, scandium, cerium, neodymium, all substances which are used in many electronic devices, but also in the car industry. Then we have a very high energy consumption. This has to be taken into account when planning cell or broadcasting towers. They need a lot of energy. Think about it. And then we have potential influence on flora and fauna. We have a dramatic decrease in the insect population, for example, or we have tree death. This is also related to other factors and climate change. But EMF is an important cofactor in this case. Referring to electro-hypersensitivity, we have an important distinction. We have the so-called electro-hypersensibility. That means that humans with electro-hypersensibility can feel electromagnetic fields, but they do not suffer from them. It's like animals, for example, cats, they like fields, and dogs avoid fields. This is mostly unknown. On the other hand, we have the electro-hypersensitivity. These humans have undesirable reactions and a wide range of complaints because of EMF. Other facts about electro-hypersensitivity. Long-term exposure to certain EMFs is a risk factor. The emerging electromagnetic hypersensitivity is more and more recognized by health authorities, disability administrators and caseworkers, politicians, as well as courts of law. Are there any data? Are there any studies? I say that there is existing a problem of medical counter-argumentation. This is a militant tactics to avoid reasonable arguments and to minimize the attention of the addressed people. That means that each study is refuted with a counter study, whether pro or contra. And so it is discussing about studies and not about facts. It is also important to take into consideration the significance of case reports and empirical evidence, not only evidence-based. Empirical evidence is also very, very important. Then there are important appropriate study models. For example, for the 5G research, are they existing? Question mark. And then we need long-term studies. The conclusion is that we all are participants in a global field trial lasting about 25 to 30 years or longer. What are symptoms of electro-hypersensitivity? Sleeping disorders, stress, anxiety, irritability, headache, tinnitus, concentration and learning difficulties, fatigue, energy loss, depression, feeling of faintness, but also vertigo, dizziness, orientation disorders, eye strain, and increased intraocular pressure, or also flu-like symptoms. These are all symptoms you find also in with other illnesses. It is for the discussion that the WHO does not consider EHS as a diagnosis and recommends to medical doctors that the treatment of affected individuals should focus on the health symptoms and the clinical picture and not on a person's perceived need for reducing or eliminating EMF in the workplace at home. Based on the existing evidence and practical knowledge, this view ignores a causal approach. And therefore, we recommend classifying EHS as a part of CMI, but still recognizing that the underlying cause remains the environment. As I quoted before, all these symptoms could be symptoms of other diseases. For example, psychosomatic symptoms or burnout. Therefore, you need an exact diagnosis. And you need a structure, or you need guidelines. And in the year 2016, they were created the Europa EMF guideline for the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of EMF-related health problems and illnesses. This was created by an international working group, and they give you an overview and recommendations for action. Therefore, we have recommendations for action, but these recommendations are preliminary and in large parts based on the experience of the authors of the guidelines. The international scientific community, that means you, is cordially invited to supplement and update these guidelines. Please do it. Referring to the differential diagnosis, we have to perform a comprehensive medical history, then EMF exposure assessed by EMF measurements at home and at work, and to check the individual susceptibility. Referring to therapy, the primary method of treatment should mainly focus on prevention. That means prevention first, or the reduction of EMF exposure. Reduce detrimental EMF exposure, give the body a chance to recover. The challenge is the detection of environmental cofactors. This is very, very, very important. Exposure prophylaxis is, for example, changing the bedroom. In Finland, psychotherapy is the officially recommended therapy for EHS. And the best treatment for EHS were given as weighted effects. For example, dietary change in 69.4%, nutritional supplements in 67.8%, and last but not least, increased physical exercise, 61.6%. It's very, very important also to have and to perform physical exercise as a therapy. How we have to proceed if EMF-related health problems are suspected. There are 7 points. First, you have to check the history of health problems and EMF exposure. Then you have to perform a medical examination and findings. Following medical examinations are important. The core diagnosis should focus on nitric oxide production, then mitochondriopathy, oxidative stress lipid peroxidation, then parameters of inflammation, and also the melatonin status. Furthermore, you have to perform a basic diagnostic test, for example, blood pressure and heart rate, in all cases, resting heart rate in the morning while still in bed, including self-monitoring, possibly several times a day, for example, also at different locations, and with journaling of subjective well-being for a week. This is very important. Furthermore, there are additional diagnostic tests like 24-hour blood pressure monitoring, 24-hour ECG, 24-hour heart rate variability, ergometry under physical stress, and sleep EEG at home. Then they are considered laboratory tests, provocation tests, and individuals, and to check the individual susceptibility. For example, there are also existing genetic parameters which have to be checked. How we have to proceed if EMF-related health problems are suspected. Next point is an assessment of certain EMF exposures and certified measurement of EMF exposure. And this is very important. This is performed preferably by certified experts. Then point 5 is the reduction and prevention of EMF exposure, diagnosis, and last but not least, the treatment of the patient, including the environment. Please don't forget it. Then we have environmental medicine treatments. It is a fact that until now, no specific treatment of EHS has been established. This is very important to know. The following paragraphs are recommendations based on the combined experience of the team. And what are the recommendations? First of all, to control the control of total body burden by various environmental pollutants at home, workplace, school, hobby, but also very important to check food additives and dental materials. Then a reduction of oxidative and or nitrosative stress, the regulation of intestinal dysfunction, optimizing nutrition, like bioactive food, yeah. That means sustainably produced, seasonally and freshly harvested, okay? Then the control of silent inflammation, normalization of mitochondrial function, a detoxification, and adjuvant therapies like lifestyle coaching, exercise training, sleep, sauna, therapeutic hypothermia. Now, what can we do? First of all, we have to establish guidelines and rules for safe handling and usage. The medical chamber in Vienna, Austria, performed guidelines and rules, and we published these rules in 23 word languages, also in Esperanto, so that the population knows how to use smartphones or cell phones. Furthermore, in the year 2017, the so-called Nicosia Declaration on electromagnetic fields and radio frequency was established. There are 16 practical cell phone rules which are proposed for the population, because the public has a right to be fully informed of the potential health risks posed by all wireless and EMF emitting devices and strategies to reduce the risks. And the Nicosia Declaration was also made for children. It's very important also to take into consideration children's health. What else can we do? We have to take care of the precaution principle. It is detailed in the Article 191 of the Treaty on the Function of the European Union. The implementation of mobile-free zones and phases, and implementation of recycling activities, then also technical modifications to reduce the radiation exposure. For example, the SAR value, but we can also produce zero-emission telephones. We can limit values and also find what is very important, wired solutions. Think about it. They are faster, safer, and not potentially harmful. What else can you do? You had elections in the United States, but you can inform our elected representatives and take them up on their promise to make EMF a campaign topic. And then ask the fundamental 5G questions. That means, what value is added by my use of the 5G devices? Who is liable? Should my health be adversely affected, even many years or decades later? Why are insurance companies refusing to underwrite 5G devices? How many 5G wireless installations are planned to be installed near my home or workplace? Where does the electrical power supply come from? Are the frequencies going to be monitored and disclosed so I know what I'm being exposed to? With 5G and the Internet of Things, is my personal data secure? Question mark. What are the conclusions? Restoring a world without mobile phones is an illusion. It is a matter of propagating precautions and rules for prudent handling of these technologies and encouraging and motivating the people to use these technologies as a tool. That is only when really needed. Okay? The next conclusion is, furthermore, potentially harmful technologies can be replaced by the implementation of other technologies without loss of comfort, with sometimes even faster data transmission, like fiber optic cables or visible light communications. Last but not least, the simplest and easiest strategy is to implement EMF-free zones and periods. Especially for the 5G, when new technologies present a potential health risk, the precautionary principle or the ALARA principle should be applied and respected. ALARA means as low as reasonably achievable. When adapting to new technologies, use of common sense is imperative. And don't forget, referring to the smart world, intelligence is an attribute of life, not of technology. Thank you for your attention.